Mr. Dunford, I've got this view from Bridge exam, GCSE English Literature, really soon. I don't know what to do, and I don't know nothing. I know nothing. How am I going to revise for it?
First of all, just calm down. Calm down. The first thing you need to realize is the play. What do you know about plays?
Oh, yeah, plays. I mean, you act them out, don't you? You have them on stage, don't you?
Exactly right, Francis. So when they're acting them out, what you need to do is make comments about how it will be acted out. So when you're in the exam, you read an extract.
Yeah.
And they ask you a question about how it's interesting or shocking.
Yeah.
Think about how it will be performed on stage.
Okay. So, but then what do I do? I mean, I can't just say it's really interesting, can I? I mean, how do I answer the question?
Well, as soon as you get the extract, read it over, see what's taking place, have an understanding of where it's going, and then once you have an understanding of that, start to underline key phrases or highlight them and make it interesting to you. So obviously, if you do that, you should know what the whole story's about. Do you know what the story's about?
Oh yeah, View from Bridge. Yeah, it's about this guy Eddie Garboni, isn't it? And he's in love with his niece Catherine, but she doesn't really like him so much. She likes Rodolfo, doesn't she? The guy that's come from Italy and stuff like that. Is it all right just to write that?
No, you don't want to just write that. You don't want to describe what happens. You basically want to describe what is taking place in the scene and how it will be performed. And you need to be critical of how we would make it interesting. So we find key quotes, key phrases, look at the stage directions. Think about how people are situated on stage, how lighting is used, how the audience would feel at certain times, and why. What words do that for you?
Okay, so like say I get this extract where sort of Eddie kisses Rodolfo and Catherine, and it's really shocking, isn't it? And they've just had sex, haven't they, in the bedroom? And it's like, I like that bit. Anyway, so he finds them and he kisses him, but what am I going to say? I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's dramatic, but, you know, how am I going to answer it?
Well, why is it dramatic for you, then, in that scene?
Because it's really shocking, isn't it? That a man kisses another man. Yeah, that's
so a man kisses another man. So that's interesting to you. Well, what about
and he kisses Catherine too, doesn't he? And that's really dirty because she's kind of his niece. It's sort of incest, isn't it?
It is. It is quite interesting. It is quite interesting. But what's quite interesting is that you know the whole backstory, so you can talk about how the audience knows things already that maybe one of the characters doesn't.
Oh, so yeah, I think that's got a name, hasn't it? Dramatic irony, isn't it?
Yeah, dramatic irony, there you go. So, in a tragedy, dramatic irony is automatically built into the whole play. So you should be able to comment on those types of things and how it's making it interesting, how you're sitting at the edge of the seat, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's a real twist and turn. But, I mean, you know, how am I going to comment on the language? Because the teachers always ask me, like, analyse the language. But, I mean, how am I going to do it? Like...
Well, with a play, the key thing to look for are the stage directions. So those things that are like in boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, that say that Rodolfo is angry. Focus on those words that set the mood. And usually you're going to see a lot of adverbs using to describe things.
Well, what's an adverb?
It usually ends with an ly.
Okay. Oh, so like quickly.
Yeah, quickly. Yeah. And it helps intensify the action or the description. And that's going to make it... It's gonna fuel it to go a certain direction as far as the play. And then think about how people speak. So what you should comment is think about the types of sentences people use. So imperatives, if they're commanding people, if they're questioning people. These are things that when people speak, they have an authority or they're kind of someone that's weak. You can talk about those sentences as well.
Yeah, because I kind of the names that Eddie gives to Rodolfo are really interesting, aren't they? Like he calls him Canary. You know, maybe I could sort of talk about what that might mean. You know, why does he call him a canary? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
It could be weird. Why do you think? Because before I ask that question, because one thing you need to do is think about your personal interpretation of it. So you're being evaluated in this question is how you can critically and creatively evaluate the text. So, you're in the audience, you want to have your own personal interpretation of it, but you also need to be critical of language, and then evaluate if it's effective on you as an audience member.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that word canary quite a bit, couldn't you? You know, he calls him canary, doesn't he? Because a canary is sort of trapped in a little cage, singing away, it looks very pretty, it's kind of bird-like, and a bit sort of soft, isn't it, and weak. And maybe it's a sort of real put down, isn't it? A real criticism of Rodolfo.
And then you could talk about how it's different than actually an eagle, for example.
Yeah.
Why is it not an eagle? Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, because he has no respect for Rodolfo, does he? He just sees him. He says, doesn't he? It's another interesting phrase. He ain't right. That made me really interesting. I mean, is he like suggesting like he thinks Rodolfo might be a bit gay? I mean,
I think that is possible suggestion. It is kind of ambiguous, and I would say.
Yeah, but do I say that for definite in the exam? Like he thinks Rodolfo's gay, or do I say he might be? Or
as long as you support your opinion with examples and some evidence and evaluation, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And you can give more than one interpretation of it, and that's what makes I think the play quite interesting. Is that there is multiple interpretations of that, and the ambiguity absorbs the audience in and makes them want to find out. You know, is he going to still question his sexuality?
Yeah.
You know, is something going to come? Is he going to beat him up? You know, and ultimately at the end, what happens is quite tragic, and it is a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm really interested in the end, isn't he? Because he says to Marco, "I want my name." I thought that was very interesting, isn't it? I want my name. I mean, what does he mean by that? It's like it's a bit puzzling, isn't it? What does he mean by his name?
What does he mean by his name? He means
I want my name.
Well, he means by his name, in my opinion, it's if you look at the society at that time period, that's how he identifies himself with his who he is in his class.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing he wants to be left behind. It's his dignity, and it's as valued to him as his actual real physical life.
Yeah, because like at the beginning of the play, he's got this amazing sort of respect in the community, isn't he? And he totally loses it, doesn't he?
Yeah, and then if you think about the minor characters in the beginning of the play, they help to define that. So whenever
the longshoremen, like
the
Mike
longshoremen, whenever these people come into the play, Miller has done that for a specific reason, and he's using those people to characterize him indirectly. And because of them having those kind of the banter,
they really respect him, don't they, at the beginning of the play, and then they lose all respect for him, don't they? Over like shopping Rodolfo and Marco to the immigration authorities. I mean, that's really shocking, isn't it? And you think like, but then you think, well, maybe he had a point. Maybe Rodolfo was just trying to get his green card to stay in the States, and you know, he wasn't really into Catherine at all. He was a bit gay, as you call it. You know,
well, he did a lot of things that wouldn't have been seen as manly at the time period. So, but
singing and dancing around.
And so even now, an audience might view it very differently. But you need to be aware of when it was being filmed and what was taking place. And then if you look at the Alfieri, right? Alfieri, the lawyer, he plays a very interesting role in kind of guiding us to what people think during that time period.
Yeah, because he has a lot of respect for Eddie, doesn't he? And he says at the end of the play, he says that why he respected Eddie because he made himself wholly known. That was a quite interesting phrase, wasn't it?
And his role is very interesting after it because he is omniscient in one sense. He's all-knowing. He knows what happens at the beginning. And at some place, he becomes part of the play.
Yeah.
So he dips in and out of this godlike state.
Yeah.
And then he becomes part of it, where he can kind of manipulate and try to control things, and he does try to do that with Eddie. But ultimately, it's not enough. It's not good enough, and that's probably something that Miller might be saying, something about the play.
Yeah, and all the characters are so like vividly drawn, aren't they? Because you got Marco, who he's a real kind of solid family man, and you said he's the one with the real power in it, but he's desperate, isn't he? Because he's so poor. His family are starving in Italy. He has to have this job, and then you got Beatrice, haven't you? The wife that sort of stands up to Eddie. She knows what Eddie's up to, doesn't she? But she still loves him. I find I find her the most interesting character, actually. Yeah,
she is. I think in a lot of, if you look at this play and if you look at Death of the Salesman, we have a character that's very similar. That's like the glue of the family. It's trying to hold things together, but it's in two minds. One mind, she wants the compassion from, and wants the compassion from her husband. And she wants to fulfill that role in her society, but the other mind, she's not getting those things from her. She's wondering what's taking place in the family and how she fits in. Yeah. And she's been to some extent alienated by it. But Marco's very interesting, determined character. Wants to really just the family life back home has shaped him into how he is now and how he acts in society. And he just keeps on going to work, getting money, and that's all he cares about.
But he's got a sense of respect. I love that scene where Eddie's sort of doing a boxing match with Rodolfo, and poof, poof, 1-2, and he sort of like mashes Rodolfo up, doesn't he? And then Marco just shows him, and he tells him to lift the chair leg, and and Eddie can't, and then Marco lifts it, looking at him.
Have you ever tried that yourself?
Yeah, I tried it. I'm really, really good at it. I'm like, really strong.
So you're good
I'm
at
really
it.
tough, you know. And I'm like Marco, I reckon.
You're a family man.
Yeah, family man, really tough, except I'm not starving to death.
Okay. So.
Yeah, well, my family.
So hopefully you won't lead to be a tragic figure.
Yeah. So what would be like your final advice for me going into this exam?
Number one advice is that when you make comments, analyze. Don't describe, analyze, and say how the audience would feel at that time in the audience. So when you pick out specific lines that the audience would be shocked or interested or terrified or feel distressed because, always do that and link to what's taking place in the lines, and just picture yourself in the audience, what you see, what you would hear, the silence that you would get from a play.
Yeah, that's
it's
really...
very, those dramatic pauses are very important. And actors, that's what makes a good actor or actress. Is
it's kind of what they don't say and how they're acting off when they're not got the lines.
And I
really
think,
interesting.
you know, I always say as well, you can always, you know, listen to the play online, and that's a very important thing to do, because you really get a sense of what's taking place in the play.
Yeah, and YouTube video is quite good, isn't it, with the original sort of settings, so that's worth looking at.
The iTunes have a play that's quite good. It takes about an hour and 45 minutes to listen to it, and it's really captivating. You won't be able to stop listening to it.
Yeah.
And you can start reading it, and then you'll just basically just be absorbed, and you'll just listen.
Yeah.
You'll be so entrenched, it'll probably take 2 hours to do it, but you'll get a sense of how these actors portray the characters and they represent them through their verbally, and also the pauses and the tones of voices and the shifts and what they might, how they kind of, the pitches, how that goes as well.
Yeah, the intonation of the voice and stuff.
So my final advice is picture yourself in the audience and comment like you are an audience member.
Okay, are you listening? You better be.